I'm Ralph Newell, and I'm the host of In the Margins. Today's guest is Ruthe Farmer, founder and CEO of the Last Mile Education Fund. Ruth, as you know, we met a few weeks ago at the STEM Opportunity Alliance workshop put on by AAAS and hosted by 3M. I really felt fortunate that you and I were seated at the same table, and when we introduced ourselves and you started talking about the Last Mile Education Fund, I knew that was something that that we needed to talk to you, and Diverse needed to know more about what you're doing and try and share your message with our audience across the country. So welcome, Ruth. Say
Thanks
hello.
for having me. It was great meeting you, and I'm so glad that we sat next to each other. Um, my friend jokes that she's like, "You always talk to people on airplanes. I never talk to people on airplanes." I'm like, I've gotten a lot of things done talking to random people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Always be closing.
Exactly. That should be that's the mantra that I've heard our sales team use before. So
Yeah.
I like that. Um, But just before we get started, just to, educate the audience who might not know about you guys, can you share a bit about what exactly the Last Mile Education Fund is about?
Sure. I've spent probably almost 20 years working on talent pipeline in STEM, and in 2017 came across this thing that just kept happening where really great students I'd been following, thanks to social media across their lives, were stumbling over relatively minor disruptions, like an internship being canceled or not being able to afford a ticket to a conference, things like that. In particular, a student was going to cancel an internship because she couldn't afford to get there before getting her first paycheck, which would reimburse her for the travel.
Hmm.
So I used air miles to get her there. And then she and I and her professor sat down and were like, there's so many more students that don't have someone to call or don't
Hmm.
have someone that's going to step up and help them. So we were like, there's got to be more. So we start the Last Mile Education Fund. So basically, what we do is we believe that any student who has made it halfway through a degree in a high demand STEM field like computer science, engineering, cybersecurity, AI has proven themselves and they need to graduate. And if
Hmm.
money is the barrier to you graduating, we're here to help. So we're like a safety net fund for any what I call striving student in the last 4 semesters of a technology degree.
Now, I know you guys work with both 2 and 4 years. So is it, if it was a community college student who's looking at a 2 year degree,
Yeah,
would they could work with
absolutely.
you from the start, or would it be just their last 2 semesters?
It really depends on where we're getting our dollars. So we actually have a huge
Mm.
program with Microsoft to specifically invest in community college students in cybersecurity and related majors.
Okay.
So basically, any cybersecurity student or any community college student in a related type of major who's doing anything in security. And I really hope that if you're doing network engineering, that you're learning security. So let's
Hmm.
say,
Hmm.
like, I'm going to assume if you're doing any kind of tech degree, you're going to learn security. That's really important. They will provide those students with some cash, or we will subsidize their certification exam because sometimes that's a big barrier for students to be like, I'm working, I'm studying, I'm doing all these things, but these high stakes tests that you're going to pay several $100s to take an exam that you might not pass,
Hmm.
and that can be really high stakes. So we'll pay for those. We also give those students LinkedIn Premium for a year to help them get a job after they finish their degree. Our core business is really 4 year students in their last 4 semesters, but we also now have funding for graduate students
Mm.
at the master's and the PhD level. So, if the dollars are coming to us, we're going to get them out to the students that need them. And so I'm just basically looking to bring in support from the STEM employers and
Hmm.
make sure that these like really talented, high potential students who are on the cusp of graduation, but also extremely precarious financially, have that bridge support to get them to the finish line and into the jobs where those employers are going to benefit from their skills.
You were talking about the student that you were working with, I guess, I think you said back in 17 or 18, that was kind of the inspiration for getting the Last Mile Education Fund started. But prior to that, you've done a number of things, and one of the things that caught my eye that I read was that you worked with the Girl Scouts and I guess some of their STEM stuff. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm a green blood for life. I'm on the board
Yeah.
of Girl Scouts of Oregon, and I help Girl Scouts of Colorado with some of their STEM programming. I joined the Girl Scouts as a staff person in the Oregon Council in 2001. And, Oregon is like Intel's largest location. It's, kind of considered the Silicon Forest.
Hmm.
And very rapidly, I began building out programs related to STEM. So robotics. We had a design process program called Design and Discovery, which I personally think is one of the best design process curricula ever created. And eventually I went from the local council to what I call the mothership. I moved to New York City with 4 suitcases, sold everything I owned, and moved to New York City in 2005 to lead tech and engineering for Girl Scouts nationally.
Oh, wow.
And I was very adamant about being tech and engineering, not STEM, because so often in STEM education, everyone kind of over focuses on the S and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't focus enough on the T and the E.
Hmm.
And the reality is, almost every student in the United States takes basic science throughout the course of their K-12 experience.
Right.
Every student takes math, but technology, meaningful computer science, like and technology courses and meaningful engineering courses are not omnipresent in K-12 education. And it's mostly
Hmm.
affluent schools that have access to those types of courses. So it's growing, of course, but there's often this like, I really feel like it should be written like S and then a giant T and a giant E and a little because where the need is. And so it's not that tech and engineering is more important than other STEM disciplines, it's that it's missing.
No, so you just said you were a lifelong Girl Scout. So now I have to ask, so what's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
Well, don't get me started. Okay. I know a lot about Girl Scout cookies, and they bring in billions of dollars, like huge amount of money that comes into the organization. I like to say that it's the perfect combination of philanthropy and gluttony. And right now there's probably 6 cases in my front room. Um,
Really?
Thin Mints obviously are the best Girl Scout cookie because you can eat more of them per serving.
Mm.
But
Okay. I like the angle.
Samoas are epic. But one little tidbit I think people don't know is Thin Mint cookies are the highest selling cookie in the United States after Oreo, and they are only sold 6 weeks a year.
Wow. Wow.
So like they're one of the most popular cookies in the world.
Yeah.
And good for lots of reasons. But also I want the audience to know that when you buy a box of Girl Scout cookies, virtually all of that money stays in your community. It doesn't go to the national headquarters.
Okay.
Um, and most Girl Scout councils, 50 to 75% of their annual budget is on that cookie sale. And
Wow.
the profit margin on a box of Girl Scout cookies is somewhere around 75, 80%. Whereas if you bought a box of Oreos, maybe 20 cents is going to stay in your community. In this
Okay.
case, like over $3 or more is going to stay in your community. So I could talk about that all day. But what I do want to say about the Girl Scouts is
Hmm.
I'm very proud of the fact that I played a role in making sure that Girl Scouts has a computing and cybersecurity and engineering badge pathway from age 4 to age 18.
Okay.
And I'm very bullish on this idea of why are you building Radio Shack when you have Walmart, right?
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
lots and lots of let's build this STEM camp and this thing and this thing and this thing. It's like, where do we have access to kids for 6 to 12 years outside of school? Girl
Hmm.
Scouts, Boys and Girls Club, 4-H, and Campfire. Collectively, those organizations serve 30 million kids.
Hmm.
So the best distribution channel, the Walmart or the Amazon of youth education, is the informal out of school time networks. Those organizations already have millions of children. They're meeting with vetted volunteers. They have insurance on all those kids, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so every time I meet somebody who's like, I have to start a STEM thing for kids. And I was like, well, are you going to carry $5 million of insurance? Because I
Hmm.
guarantee you, you're going to need to. And so I really strongly encourage people who have great STEM content and ideas to partner with these organizations that already have the distribution infrastructure.
That's true.
Like you could roll up to a Girl Scout troop. So now there are badges at age 4, age 6. And that's the important thing. It's like, I need computer science to be as normalized as anything else. right? It shouldn't be exceptional. We don't have
Hmm.
like girls who bicycle, right? Girls just ride bicycles.
Right.
So the coding badge being part of your experience when you are a daisy, and then when you're a junior Girl Scout, and then when you're a cadet, and throughout your life, alongside the like Earth badge and the like camping badge, it's just normal part of life. It's not exceptional or different. It's just something girls do. And I think that's the way we get to true accessibility is where it's a normalized part of life.
Well, do you know, a lot of people wouldn't know how many badges I've earned in Girl Scouts myself and cookies I've sold
Are
because I,
you a Girl Scout dad?
yes. Oh
Do you
God.
have the man enough to be a Girl Scout t-shirt?
No, I have not seen that,
They
but
have a shirt. It says man enough to be a Girl Scout. You need to get this shirt. They also have a mug.
okay. But yeah, my two daughters did it K through 12. Well, let me take that back. My oldest did it K through 12. But then my youngest, her junior and senior year were interrupted by COVID, and so she just didn't,
Yeah.
really didn't finish it out the last 2 years. But my oldest, and I, she would kill me, but I'm forgetting what the equivalent is for Eagle
The
Scout.
Gold Award.
Yeah, she did the
It
same
is not equivalent. It is better than the Eagle Scout. It
thing.
is harder than the Eagle Scout. I am on the Gold Award committee for my council, and let me tell you, like, girls are changing laws. Like,
Mhm.
girls are doing huge things. And I know many, many, many Girl Scout Gold Award projects that have extended 30 years beyond that girl's personal input. And my own cousin developed a prom for students with special needs that
Mm.
continues, and she's been out of high school well over 10 years. And that program is still continuing every year. That the National Honor Society at her high school is putting on a special needs prom. They bring the dresses, they bring it's amazing.
That's awesome. And I'm about to go back and ask my girls about what was the badge you were just talking about
For the
before.
Gold Award.
No, no, not that. The one for coding and so forth. I don't specifically remember that one, not like I knew them all anyway, but I really like that
Well,
because
those were actually launched pretty recently.
oh,
So
okay. Okay.
when I was working in the Obama White House, which was 2016, so I got to be there for the like, this was a well-oiled machine by the time I got there, right? I was in the
Hmm.
Office of Science and Technology Policy. One of the first phone calls I made was to the Girl Scout policy person, and I was like, I am trying to get all kinds of people to come to the table to support President Obama's call for computer science for all.
Hmm.
Girl Scouts is the world's largest girls or women's organization of any kind. I'm like,
Hmm.
I will put you on the stage at the White House if you commit to computer science education.
Right.
And they did. And then following that, Raytheon and Palo Alto networks both stepped up to fund the development of these badges because, the
Okay.
badges need to be evergreen.
Hmm.
They need to be really accessible. So they made all of them unplugged. So they don't require specific technology tools. You don't have to buy certain things or have access to certain things. And they're the beginning of an interest. Obviously, we want corporate partners and others to come to the table and provide greater enrichment, right? So companies actually can host, badge days, bring the girls, have them earn the badge, but then provide whatever additional support, like knowledge about your technology, show them
Hmm.
tours, have them do things. And that can range from like Intel does a thing with Girl Scouts where they literally are like using a cookie and
Hmm.
icing a cookie to simulate making a semiconductor.
Okay.
And so you're going
Yeah.
down the production line and you're adding, circuits and stuff, but it's all icing and treats, and then they eat it at the end. To like actually having girls intern at your company when they're in high school. So like there's a
Right. Right.
whole range.
No, no, I get the parallels. That's awesome. I want to get back. Something I read today actually on our website, on the diverse website today, and I'm not sure if you've heard about this or not yet, but I just want to read a couple of excerpts from this. But it's about a GOP sponsored bill that's in the House right now to change Pell Grant eligibility requirements, and just kind of jotted down the highlights. They were saying that students would need to take 30 credit hours per academic year, which is approximately 15 per semester, which is, raising the requirement from 12, which it currently is. Any students that take fewer than 6 credit hours would lose eligibility entirely. So obviously, that would affect students who only need like maybe a class to graduate. The legislation was also eliminating subsidized loans, which currently, spare a lot of students, undergraduate students, from accruing interest while they're in school. And we talked about you guys just getting into working with graduate students. They were also getting rid of the plus loan graduate program, capping borrowing at 100,000 for master's students, 150 for those pursuing medical or law degrees. And perhaps the most controversial part of it was the bill would also dramatically alter the amount of student loan option repayment options that are out there. So just wanted to get your reaction to those potential changes.
So I think most people don't realize the maximum Pell Grant is like 72.45,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. That won't even touch one semester of school.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to get the maximum Pell Grant, your family has to be very poor,
Right.
like extremely poor. I think it's under $60,000 for a family of four. Like it's very low. So there's actually very few students who qualify for the full Pell Grant. And if you do qualify for the full Pell Grant, it's not like it's covering a year of college is at least $20,000, right? Like,
Yeah.
but my issue with this changing of requirements, it's a very scarcity based approach.
Mm-hmm.
Any student who qualifies for the Pell Grant, I guarantee you, is having to work
Mm-hmm.
to go to school. And taking away their ability to work to earn income so that they take more credits to qualify for like a couple $1,000s,
Mm-hmm.
it's just stupid and the math doesn't work, right?
Right. Right.
And I guarantee you, not only are students from poverty working while they're going to college, but they're probably actually sending money home to their family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And we already aren't a kid who qualified for free lunch in high school gets to college, they don't have automatically have free lunch in college. Some states have implemented food stamps and access to food for students in college, and the CARES Act did require some eligibility around that, but it's not easy to get. And so, at Last Mile Education Fund, we ask every student a series of questions about precarity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sometimes, always, or never worry about having enough food? 60% of the students who ask us for help say yes or sometimes to worrying about food.
Wow. Okay.
And we're dealing with students who are juniors and seniors typically, or community college students in high demand, extremely lucrative STEM fields where when they graduate, they are going to earn more money, contribute more to society, and fill a desperately needed job role that is going to
Mm-hmm.
drive the economy. Why are we handing out little dollops of support? We
Yeah.
should be investing. And the Pell Grant, when it was envisioned, was an investment in developing the talent of Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, you could work part time and get a Pell Grant, and you could go to college. In 1970, a term at UT Austin was like $150,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is untenable right now. I think what we need to do to reduce educational costs is the universities need to reduce their administrative overhead. I don't think faculty salaries have grown 600%, but the administrative load of and a lot of that is actually, unfortunately, because of all the rules and bureaucracy and things that they have to jump through. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
gotten too complicated. It's going to take a lot to solve some of the issues in higher ed. But I think that as a country, I want us to get back to investing in the productivity of Americans through education, which is why we founded the land grant universities and was the directive to grow our productivity as a country. And it started out like, let's make farmers more productive by giving them
Mm-hmm.
education about how to grow better crops. But now it's a new day, and we need a lot of people who are knowledge workers. We need a lot of people who have a level of skill development, and that is what is going to grow our economy.
Yeah.
And this approach It's dumb. I hope it doesn't pass. It's already hard enough to go to college, especially if you're coming from poverty. There's also a problem in the financial aid system known as the cost of attendance calculation.
Mm-hmm.
So the school will publish, this is what our tuition and fees are, and then this is our estimate for living expenses. And sometimes, I mean, that estimate is being created by somebody in the financial aid office. Now, we all have Zillow, right? We all have Redfin. You can estimate the cost of living anywhere in the United States based on federal data.
Right.
So, why in the city of, and this is directly from the book Paying the Price by Dr. Sarah Goldrick Robb, in the city of Washington, D.C. alone, the universities across that city, which there's well over 20 different universities, have
Mm-hmm.
estimated the cost of living in DC for an academic year at a price point ranging from $9,000 to $23,000. Okay, you know for sure nobody's living in DC for 9 grand. So, but what happens when your cost of attendance calculation is depressed to make your school seem more affordable?
Mm-hmm.
The cost of attendance is also the maximum financial aid you can receive.
Mm.
So
Mm.
if your school says, oh, it's 12,000 to live here in DC for the year, but it's really 20,
Right.
your parents have to come up with that 8 grand, or you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so as it stands right now, students are often not getting enough financial aid. The infrastructure bill, I believe it was the infrastructure bill or the second COVID bill, did allow for temporary, like additional financial aid for emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the role last mile is playing. We're like, here you are walking a tightrope, right? You got your 2 jobs and you got school and you got your loans and you've got your grants, right? And you're walking a tightrope. If a scholarship expires, you're off that tightrope. If your car breaks down, you're off that tightrope. If you get sick and can't go to your job. So, a perfect example of this, after the shootings at Michigan State University, which was a couple years ago, we
Mm-hmm.
got dozens of applications from students like a month later, who were like, the whole city shut down. And so I didn't work for 3 weeks and now I can't pay my rent.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't that that student was a direct victim of the shooting. They were a downline victim of the fact that they couldn't waitress for 3 weeks.
Right. Right.
And so these students are so precarious that we should be coming at them with all of the generosity because they've done so much work to get there.
Yeah.
And especially if you've come from poverty, you've overcome obstacles. You have probably had to educate your parents
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
the meaning and the need for a college degree. You really want it
Yeah.
and you've done the work. We need to get you over the finish line.
Yeah. We're talking about student loans, and I know you guys keep up with a lot of data. I was very intrigued by some of the data you guys were presenting in your webinar yesterday. Um, I don't know if you said this or not, but what percentage of your students are are receiving student loans? Do you guys know that?
I could get you that number. We do ask
Mm-hmm.
if students are receiving loans, and we ask that for a couple reasons. One, we're not a replacement for financial aid or doing any of the things that you need to do to go to college. We are a gap funder. Like we're here to close a gap. So
Mm-hmm.
if a student comes to us and is like, it's my dream to graduate debt free and I'm 6 months from my degree in engineering, I'm like, sorry, like we're not your solution. But if a student has like been successful in getting scholarships and all the things, but they don't need the loans, we'll
Mm-hmm.
still help them because if you've managed, if it's only like a little, you're going to community college, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
even cost $1,000 a term, or maybe it's free. I'm not expecting you to take out debt for that
Right.
experience.
Right.
I'm
Right.
perfectly happy to help you with an emergency issue that you need to deal with. I mean, more power to you if you can get through that. But we will probably soon be publishing data on student debt and how much debt students are holding, because we are asking that question, like how much debt do you already hold, and and whether or not they are taking out student loans. Our eligibility criteria at Last Mile Education Fund is, do you have financial need and are you in one of the majors for which I have
Mm-hmm.
funding, right?
Right.
So our approach to financial need is extremely abundant.
Hmm.
So we're not trying to gatekeep. Um, we consider any student who's qualified for federally subsidized student loans and aid to be having need,
Yeah.
right? And we don't make them jump through a bunch of hoops and perform their poverty to get the money. We're just like, show us your award letter from the school, good to go. If for whatever reason they don't have that documentation, then we have a quick interview conversation and figure out how we can handle the documentation. But for the most part, we're taking a generosity approach and a abundance approach because every single student who graduates and goes into one of these high demand fields, they're going to earn over $32,000 a year in their first year. And if
Hmm.
we're investing on average less than $3,000 a person, I can fund 9 who don't graduate.
Right,
And
right.
if one graduates, we're like, woo, we got that $3,000 back. So, you know, the ROI is so high that it's worth the risk for us.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because that was one of the things I wrote down to I wanted you to talk about. I was very impressed with the ROI numbers that you guys were giving out for your recipients, of not only the ROI to them as individuals and their families and their communities, but also, to the country in regards to paying taxes, et cetera. So, could you further explain that?
Yeah. So we've done a lot of work to really understand like what is the return on our investment. And we really do see this as an investment. This is not
Hmm.
charity. Like we're investing in somebody who's going to be a net positive contributor to the social safety net forever, right?
Hmm.
So what we look at is how much more is this person going to earn over their lifetime? How much more are they going to save? So how much wealth are they going to build? Because that wealth then gets passed on to their children.
Hmm.
And then the third component is how much are they going to pay in taxes? And
Hmm.
so in 10 years, one graduate will earn $510,000 more. They will save an additional $30,000 towards their retirement.
Hmm.
They will pay $134,000 more in federal taxes.
Hmm.
And it will save the government $198,000 in 10 years. In their lifetime, it saves the government almost $900,000 because this person is less likely to be unemployed, so drawing
Hmm.
less unemployment, tremendously less likely to be incarcerated.
Hmm.
And they're not drawing down from the social safety net programs, food
Hmm.
stamps and housing and other things. And so not only are they not pulling from the federal coffers, they're contributing to the federal coffers, which then support all of us. Now that I don't quite have yet the full view because if you think about what is the economic footprint of a person who earns six figures?
Hmm.
They buy a
Hmm.
house, they buy a car, they go out to dinner, they put their kids in the schools. Like there's an entire economic halo that is
Hmm.
created. And then chances are, if you educate one person in a family, then more people in their family are going to get educated.
Right, right, absolutely.
And it's this big domino effect. So it has so much tremendous power. And I think the other important thing to note is when we invest in a student and we get them to graduation, we are leveraging an estimated $630,000 that has been invested. So, like, that is how much money does it cost to raise a child in the United States? Let's add some premium for all the STEM education outreach and everything that's like a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Hmm.
2 years of college, plus the opportunity cost of them not working for all the years they're going to college.
Hmm.
That comes to $630,000 of sunk costs. So
Yeah,
we can put in $3,000 in that last 4 semesters and they graduate and we're leveraging and getting the return on all those sunk costs.
yeah. I don't know if you guys want to make it available for people to see on your website, but I would definitely encourage them to go watch your webinar from yesterday if you guys are going to allow people to go back and watch it.
It
Uh,
is definitely available. And the impact report, if you go to lastmile-ed.org/impact, Go to our
Mm-hmm.
impact page. You can see not only the impact report, but we've got a sort of a monthly live ticker. And I think we said it in the webinar yesterday. When we ended December 2024, we had funded a little over 9,000 students, about $11 million.
Right.
Today, we're over 10,000 students, $13 million, 3 months later. So
Yeah.
moving cash fast.
No, it's phenomenal. And I was looking at the schools, the top schools that you guys have worked with, both 4 year and 2 year. For those who are listening who don't know about the program, how can they, does the institution have to be a member? Can any student sign up? Tell them more about that.
Yeah, we are institutionally agnostic, right?
Okay. Okay.
So any student attending any US institution in the
Hmm.
majors for which we support, which there's a whole big list of them on the website, there's over like 110 different majors, can apply directly to us on our website. We give you the money as an unrestricted cash gift. So it will
Hmm.
not affect your taxes. It will not change your financial aid package, because there's this unfortunate thing called scholarship displacement. When a
Hmm.
student receives an additional scholarship, their school reduces their financial aid package by that amount of money rather than it being net gain to them.
Right.
So we're giving it to them just like if I was your grandma and I was just going to give you a check when you came to visit. Like,
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
gift. So any student can apply directly there. If faculty, I have an ask for faculty. Faculty are the front line. They are the ones who see that student staying after to eat all the catering at the events. They see that student falling asleep in class because they're working too many hours. So we have on our website a sample syllabus statement, which is drawn from the work of Dr. Sarah Goldrick Robb, who works a lot on basic needs issues for students. Basically, we're asking faculty to put a statement in their syllabus that says, we know people struggle. Here's the things on our campus, and here's the Last Mile Education Fund if you need help. Because we want to normalize asking for help rather than dropping out because you don't have it, right? And so faculty, please take our faculty toolkit, tell students about the opportunity, but also we have an anonymous referral form because sometimes there's a lot of shame associated
Mm.
with
Yeah.
struggle. And for a student, I remember a student we funded who she was this spectacular um, CS student at MIT. And she had
Mm-hmm.
interned at places like Apple and Google. And she had chosen to spend her last term of school doing a research project at MIT over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd had a car accident, and that car accident took all of her money. And so she ended up living in her car, and we funded her to get her into housing. But here she is at one of the most prestigious institutions in the country doing
Right.
extremely high level work. But she's living in her car, which we all know is not safe
Right.
and certainly not comfortable in Boston in the summer.
Right. Or winter.
And so, but do you really want to raise your hand in the middle of a place like MIT and be like, look, I'm homeless, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what's really special about Last Mile Education Fund is students can come to us and nobody in their academic community needs to know.
Right.
And so we have an anonymous referral form for faculty to refer students to get an invitation to apply from us.
And I got the impression from talking with you and listening to your stories when we were in St. Paul as well as in the webinar. You guys will help students out in any way where there's a financial barrier. So, can you sort of share, like you just shared the story of the young lady there in Boston who needed help with their car? What other types of financial assistance have you given people to help them overcome X? Like,
Yeah, we've paid for dental work.
okay,
We've paid for a number of funerals and cremations because
wow.
if you're the oldest child in your family and
Mhm.
a family member dies, in particular, a woman who's actually featured in our impact report. She on the Navajo reservation, and there were so many deaths from COVID that the community was just overtaxed, and she had a family member pass away, and she was going to drop out of school to cover the cost of that funeral. And so we helped her, and she's now in graduate school.
Wow.
And, the number of Native American women in computing in the United States annually that get a degree in computing annually in the United States is under 100.
Wow.
So, like, losing one is detrimental to the entire nation. And
Mm-hmm.
so Felicie is, now in graduate school, continuing her education and is going to contribute to the research work of the United States in computing. And like, we can't afford to lose the voices of Native Americans from the development of technology. Like, we can't afford to lose the voices of anyone, but we have so few Native Americans in that space that, like, losing her would have been so tragic. So if you got to buy some nice clothes to make you feel confident for an interview, buy that. Like, we're
Mm-hmm.
not policing what you do with this money.
Right.
And sometimes, paying your family's gas bill is the barrier that you're facing.
Mm-hmm.
Statistically, number one reason kids leave college is financial.
Mm-hmm.
Number two reason is family obligations. It is way easier to survive your parent getting cancer if you're not also poor.
Right.
And so, really, it's all about money. And
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes joke about this. People are like, oh, kids need mentors, they need social capital, I'm like, they need cash. They need gas, food, rent.
Right. Right.
They need a good internet connection and a state-of-the-art device. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they need their basic needs met, and then they can get social capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they can spend time with a mentor. They need stability. And so we're here to be that safety net, or I like to joke, we're like the cool rich aunt that you call when you need some cash, and get them to a stable place so then they can take advantage of the other resources available to them and do the things that they need to do to get hired.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, I just really love what you guys do. I think we all see the big picture. You have the universities, you have students who are going to get their degrees and they're going to contribute to society. But it's the little dotting of the I's and crossing the T's that we miss out on. I mean, you were just talking, what you were just saying there, it made me think about the student yesterday who you guys got him a computer, you know, and that's what it took for him to finish school. I mean, but I think a lot of times you don't think about that. Oh, they need paper or pencil or a computer or a calculator and stuff like
Well,
that.
and I am very bullish on this. So the students we are funding are
Mhm.
computer science and engineering.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to create a state-of-the-art technologist, give them state-of-the-art technology.
Mhm.
So when a student asks last mile for a computer, we say, go to the Best Buy website, pick out 3 computers, we'll buy what you want. And we give them what they want and what they need because they
Hmm.
know what's required. And so a really great example of this is we had a student in Detroit 2, 3 years ago. There was a big flood north of Detroit. She was in a first floor apartment. So she lost everything: clothes, bedding, washing machine, car, everything, including her MacBook Pro.
Hmm.
She was 3 months from finishing her degree at Wayne State University. And
Hmm.
so first thing she did was, she went to Wayne State and said, I need a new computer. They're like, well, we can lend you a Chromebook. And she's like, I'm a senior in computer science. I can't
Right.
compile programs on a Chromebook. And so we got her a MacBook Pro the next day. We also got her an air mattress and some blankets and pillows and other things to get her
Hmm.
stable.
Hmm.
And sure, FEMA was on hand and there'd been a national emergency declared, but by the time FEMA would have helped her, school would have been over and she would have
Hmm.
had to quit that term and start all over to finish that last term. And, the opportunity cost of that
Right.
and the lost time, and she was so close. And so we're looking at these students who are just literally weeks. I just funded $856 to pay a Con Edison bill for a woman who has a job
Hmm.
at Citibank in June, but her power's being turned off in April.
Right.
I'm
Right.
like, she needs 2 months,
Hmm. Hmm.
just 2 months. And she's going to be in that great job. She's going to be able to pay all her bills. She's going to be able to contribute. And that's the piece that's missing.
Let me tell you what inspired me and just really touched me you guys are only 5 years old, and you already have students, you can talk about this, who you guys have supported, who are now out on their own, if you will, that are now supporting you guys, giving
Yep.
donation.
We um we always knew there would be a pay it forward model. And actually the
Hmm.
percentage of students who in their application say, I can't wait until I'm in a position where I can pay it forward. And the first student who did that was a young woman going to Spelman College in which is, one of the most prestigious historically Black colleges in the nation, computer science, Spelman College, and was literally eating at a food bank while trying to finish her senior year and interview at top companies. And those
Mm,
interviews are high stakes. Like you've got to prep 20 hours for each interview. It's a
right.
stand and deliver kind of moment. And I remember her application. She said, I've never been so anxious and afraid. And and I know this will pass, but I just don't know what to do right now. And her car had broken down, which meant she couldn't get to the jobs, which meant she couldn't get to school. And it was just this domino moment. And we
Hmm.
invested in her. And it was February of 2020. And so you know exactly what happened in March of 2020. Like if we had
Mm,
not provided her that safety net to the end of the school year, she really could have been in serious trouble. And she started a job at one of the top tech companies in August. And then she came back in October and was like, it's the month of giving. Of course, you're my first choice.
hmm.
And
Hmm.
just a couple weeks ago, we had a student, send us $100 and say like, you helped me, and now I'm an analyst at AT&T. And right when we were on that webinar, a young woman put into the chat, she was like, as soon as I get a job, I'm putting an auto payment to donate to Last Mile Education Fund. Like these are people who have experienced scarcity and they don't want anyone else to experience it. And
Hmm.
they have empathy. And I think they're just going to make incredible contributors. They're going
Hmm.
to bring something to the workforce that others who haven't faced struggle and had to overcome struggle maybe just don't have.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, we're kind of running out of time here. Um, I guess that, maybe one of the last things I want to ask you is maybe, if you can give some advice for people who are aspiring to be leaders and entrepreneurs to help out people in society. Um, Obviously, that seems to be a path you've taken. What advice would you give them?
Well, one is I look at the entire world from an abundance viewpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we start to think of the world from the scarcity viewpoint, where like there's only so much opportunity or education or money to go around, that's when we start to um, fail. And when you look at the world from an abundance viewpoint, it just changes things. And when you give that, the message we're trying to give to students is like, we believe in you. We think you're a great investment. We
Mm-hmm.
know you're going to go forward. Here you go. And so I think it was said by Baratunde Thurston on the webinar yesterday. He's like
Mm-hmm.
that you're not treating people like with pity and
Right.
I think that's really important. I have my own personal story of growing up in poverty and having experienced this myself. So like I think it's important that the people in your organization, at least some of them, have shared lived experiences um, with the community. And then I think the thing that I'm trying to completely disrupt the idea of who deserves a scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way we have built scholarships in the United States is like, let's find all the possible students and pick the best 10.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to ignore the 400 that applied, right? And so that is a weed out methodology.
Mm-hmm.
And we need 1.1 million software engineers by 2034. We need 700,000 cybersecurity workers right now. The Chips and Science Act is predicting we need 200,000 semiconductor workers per year. Okay. So we can't afford to be weeding people out. We need to be weeding people in. And that's what I mean by abundance is like you're looking for talent everywhere. And sometimes the people that go the furthest with your support are the ones that have had to try harder or are just, below that outlier mark. And, I'm pretty I remember when I was building aspirations in computing, which every young person should, who is a woman or non-binary, should join aspirations.org if you're in
Mhm.
computing at any level, because you basically get a career fairy godmother for your whole life. Um, that organization, as I was building it, I was like, we want to find every single person who has raised their hand versus finding the people who are already winning.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And this kind of come one, come all. And, to go back to your like advice to other people is like, one, I always look for unlikely partners.
Mhm. Okay.
Who are your unlikely partners? Because sometimes that can be extremely powerful. Just because something has always been a certain way doesn't mean it needs to be,
Right. Right.
right? It's okay to completely turn it on its head. And then I really feel like you have to identify where is the win in the process for everyone, right? So in
Mhm.
our
Mhm.
case, students are winning because they're graduating. Universities are winning because their students are graduating,
Yeah.
right? Employers are winning because they're getting access to more talent. And then
So,
society is winning because we're all
mhm.
contributing more money to the safety net.
Yeah. I'm thinking about all this anti-DEI fervor, right? And when I look at the demographics of the students that you guys support, it's there are a lot of students that are below the poverty level. Most of them are, in underrepresented communities. But I look at the corporations, and I didn't dissect it to say, okay, who says they're still pro DEI, who's not. But do you think, or have you felt any type of backlash from maybe companies that you were working with that now maybe don't want to work with you guys or anything like that?
Well, I mean, we select our students solely on socioeconomic status.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody wants to accuse us of DEI favoritism, they can't because we're selecting solely on socioeconomic status. However, I think this anti-DEI rhetoric is
Mm-hmm.
really, really foolish. And I'll tell you why. It's a simple math problem. Since 2014, the United States K-12 system has been majority non-white. So our
Mm-hmm.
talent pipeline is majority non-white. For 5 years now, our schools, our K-12 schools have been majority free and reduced lunch. Our
Mm-hmm.
talent pipeline is not white, non-white, black and brown, and
Mm-hmm.
largely poor.
Right.
And I think I said this yesterday. Higher education was built as a finishing school for the children of the affluent. And
Yes.
we have put a few band-aids on it here or there, but ultimately there's an assumption that if you are in college, you have access to credit or capital or some kind of safety net. Now, when we do the math, if we basically throw out everyone who's considered a DEI group, right? Women, which,
Right.
by the way, are more than half the population and 100% of the mothers of humans,
Mhm.
not a minority group, but okay. So,
Right.
women, people with disabilities, and people of color, everyone who's underrepresented currently in like technology careers, we're throwing out 75% of the potential talent pool. We can't afford to do that. We need a lot of people. We need everybody, especially now that, immigrating to the United States to work in tech is not as attractive as it once was.
Right. Right.
And it's not as easy as it once was. And so not only are companies not going to be as motivated to bring talent from overseas because it's so much harder for them in terms of the bureaucracy,
Right.
it's just not as attractive as it used to be. And so if there was ever a time to invest in the home team,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's now. And guess what? The home team is black and brown and poor.
Right. Right. Okay. I couldn't have said it any better. You definitely are a disruptor. I like that. So, keep it going. All right. With any last words? And
Well, I just want to say thank you, Ralph, and Diverse Issues in Higher Ed for this platform. I welcome any corporate partner or individual who wants to give because on average we're spending less than $3,000 and we're getting a student over the finish line and into a net positive position. And to the students, like normalize asking for help. Like you are the future of America. Like we want you to succeed. So ask for help because it's out there.
all right. Thank you, Ruth.